Okay, welcome to week 7. This week we're going to start into the first set of a couple of weeks here. We're going to talk about the data science workflow life cycle. And I'm going to cover some heavy parts here about exploratory data analysis, and then we're going to go into some of the other pieces too as well. So with exploratory data analysis, we really want to understand what EDA is, the techniques, and how you can use that with Pandas, Pandas profiling, and Matplotlib. Three of the most common ways of handling exploratory data analysis. Now, you were probably exposed to this in other data analytics courses, unless this is your first course. So, I won't go into too much detail about exploratory data analysis, but if you're interested in more thoughts on EDA, I'd be happy to follow up with a conversation on that, or your instructor would. So for this particular example, this demonstration, I'm going to show you how we're going to use the iris data set. So again, just using a very simple, small, common data set everybody has access to. We're going to use Pandas to display the first 5 rows. We're going to calculate summary statistics on that data set. And then we're going to start looking at the shape of the data. We're going to visualize the distribution of the target variable using a bar chart. We're going to visualize the distribution of the target variable by class using a stacked bar chart. We're going to plot a histogram to visualize the distribution of age. We're going to plot a scatter plot to look at the relationship between age and fair. Um, we're going to go in to use the Pandas profiling. It's the first time we're going to get into that. And so Pandas profiling is a tremendous tool that does a lot of the EDA heavy lifting for you. So another purpose of this week is to kind of show you that comparison between doing it kind of manually step by step and doing it through a tool like Pandas profiling. The next 3 things: visualize any missing values in the data set, visualize any outliers in the data set, and visualize any correlations between variables within the data set. So we're also going to do that as part of this. So again, we're going to be working off of this Jupyter notebook, the Python file. The text file are all going to be inputs coming in directly from the library itself. So first of all, we're going to load the iris data set. So nothing here that's too spectacular. The one thing is the Y data profiling piece of it. That's the Pandas profiling part kind of pulled out of it. I'm going to load the Seaborn application library plus Matplotlib plus Pandas, but some students may have difficulty with the installing the Y data profiling. So depending on your system, you got to kind of watch. And if you're having difficulty, check the permissions on the directory, because that specific library loads slightly different in some cases. If you're doing this on an online version, such as using the Anaconda Cloud, for instance, you won't have this particular issue. It'll already be connected for you. But that's about the only part of the setup that you may have some difficulty with. Some students have had difficulty getting Pandas profiling to install. If you do, please reach out to the instructor. But here's the basic load. We're going to load it into a data frame called DF. We're going to print off the head, which is going to give us the first 5 rows of the observations, as you can see. So again, if you've been involved in other data science projects, you've seen the iris data set. This is a very common one. The next thing we're going to do is a describe. The describe is going to give you some of the summary statistics. So it's going to give you the total count, the mean, the standard deviation, the min, the 25%, 50, and 75% quartiles, and the max. So if we were going to visualize it using a bar chart, again, just using a simple plot right here, we're going to use the target counts index and the target counts values in order to do that, plotting the count versus the target. We're going to visualize it using a stacked bar chart using the Seaborn. So a hist plot. We're going to plot the distribution of age using a hist plot. Of the this one here, I'm sorry, this is not age, this is sepal length. So correction on that. The next thing I'm going to do is do the scatter plot to visualize the relationship between sepal length and petal length. And so this is probably the most of the valuable of those. The histogram plus also the scatter plot are probably the 2 most valuable plots that you can pull off of both of these two. So this one here is showing you a general linear relationship, and so that influences which kind of modeling technique you can use. So here's the profiling report. So this is the call to it. So I'm going to put on the top of it a title of Pandas Profiling Report. I'm going to leave it in explorative mode, and I'm going to use the data frame as the example. Now using the profile to widgets produces a nice little widget here. And so it'll take about, this one here took about 8 seconds in order to generate. It'll summarize the data set, it will generate a report, and then it gives you this interactive little widget here that you can interact on and you can move back and forth with. Now I will warn you about Pandas profiling. Using it on large data sets can result in really long run times. Because it has to do these summarizations, it has to do things like correlations, etc. So for this course, we're going to use data sets that are relatively small in size, but when you get to your final project, if you decide to use Pandas profiling, you may see that it's going to take a long time for this to run. The trade-off is it gives you a very complete EDA all pretty much wrapped up for you. So here you can kind of see the number of variables that we have is 5. The total number of observation is 150. Again, when that starts to get up over 100,000, 200,000, depending on your system, depending on the platform you're running this on, it could take a while for this to generate. There's no percent missing data, so we know there is no missing data. There is one duplicate row, though, and it's 0.7% of the data. And then if we look at the alerts right here, you can see there's one duplicate row, and if you click there, it'll take you to it. And then you see there's some highly correlated items here. So sepal length and petal length are highly correlated, as well as two other variables which you see here. Target is uniformly distributed, so that is an important part to remember as well. This particular run took 5 seconds in order to analyze. Again, you can see 150 rows, 150 observations. It's fairly, and 5 variables. It's fairly small that it has to go through. So if we go and we look at individual variables, and you can see here's the shape, here's a histogram showing it. And if you click on more details, you can get even more information out of it. There's a high correlation as well. It'll show you things, quality measurements such as missing. It'll show you mean, total number of distinct, etc. So interactions. So if you're looking at sepal length to petal length, you see it automatically does all of the scatter plots for you. Obviously comparing itself, you're going to get a straight line. Here we see a weak relationship. Here we see a linear relationship, a relatively decent linear relationship. So you can kind of see different relationships teased out through the scatter plots. Now if we look at correlations, it's going to give you a nice pretty heat map, and you can see things that have a higher correlation colored versus things that have a lower correlation. You can also get numerical values out of this as well. As stated, we do not have any missing values. And it even shows you a sample of the first rows and the last rows, as well as the duplicate rows. So all within this one widget, you're able to basically tease out everything else that we show in these visuals, these manual steps that I'm showing you in the rest of it. So here, to continue on down, if we're going to build our own heat map, here's a heat map here using the heat map function of Seaborn. Here's a pair plot, so it's running all of the scatter plots side by side, so you can see the values there. And obviously when comparing to itself, and so that's basically the demonstration for this week. It shows you all the individual pieces that you're going to need in order to do your student workbook. Now for your student workbook, ask that you load the Titanic dataset and look at the first 5 rows, display summary statistics, display the target variable using a bar chart and a stacked bar chart, plot a histogram to show the distribution of age, create a scatter plot to visualize the relationship between age and fare, use pandas profiling to generate a detailed report of the dataset, identify any missing values in the dataset, and visualize any outliers within the dataset. Identify any correlations between variables. So our grading criteria have not changed. And to actually give you a head start in this, here is the load for loading the data set. That's included here, as well as just a generic count that goes on top of it. So this is pulled from the Titanic data set. Again, that's information about passengers on the Titanic, demographics, ticket information, etc. This was downloaded from Kaggle. We're downloading it automatically. It's included in the Seaborn data sets, the load data set. So by simply calling this command, you're going to load a data frame into the Titanic right here that you can then turn around and use. So give you that first initial start there of loading the data set. That's the data set that you can load and you can use off of it. Okay? So then you just simply would take that and then continue to work on the Titanic data set. So that's the assignment for this week. If you have any questions, please reach out. Discussion boards, office hours, or one-on-one with the instructor through an email. Again, probably the only part of this assignment that would cause you a little bit of concern or difficulty may be installing the Pandas profiling library. If you need any additional information, please reach out. Have a good one.